Sandra, I think you're on mute.
Certainly was. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
We don't have a quorum, but if we go to the first item on the agenda, it doesn't require a vote and we could start.
How many do we have? That's
We have 3.
3 on this committee.
Uh-huh. Yes, I'm sorry, that wasn't very polite.
What is our answers? Okay, so on this agenda, Sandra, like I said, we can't really resolve the minutes, can't vote on that. So
Right.
You're wanting to go ahead and start with the discussion or the recommendations here?
We could either do the key design questions, or you could do the C&D materials update.
Okay, which one would you rather do? The C&D update will be relatively short.
Why don't we do that first, and that will give at least one more person a chance to join us.
Okay, understood. Right, I am going to share, I think.
Kim Martinez is here. That makes a quorum.
That's true.
Can you guys
So we
hear
do-
me?
Yes.
Okay, just double checking.
Okay, Sandra, you want to just go as normal now?
It's up to you. You look like you're ready for us.
Okay, yeah, I can go ahead and let me do, let me jump down to that part. Okay, the asphalt shingle specifications update. I've spoken with Scott Quire out at the Bluegrass Testing Labs. He is working on it. He hopes to have it done, at least the preliminary mix specifications this week. He, one of the things that is kind of slowing us down is, if you guys remember, the Kentucky Department of Transportation was tinkering with their going to a performance standard for asphalt, and they have not finished tinkering with that specification yet. They think they know what that's going to turn out to be, and that's why he's going to go ahead and bring us up with a mix. But really, I don't think that there's any way that we can possibly really know until probably in March, he said, is when they expect for the DOT to be complete and for us really to know where we're going to end up. He's fairly confident that he can come up with a really good specification. One of the questions that he has, and maybe Sandra and Bruce, you guys can tell me as someone that has maybe put in specifications for doing asphalt paving in your small city. Do you guys use the state specifications, or do you use the APWA, which is the Public Works standard mix, when you put into those specifications? Do you guys have any idea?
We use the state standards.
State standards. Okay, that is what Metro does as well, and I figured that to be the case. If during your discussions with other members of the league, if you can generally ask them, are they dealing with more Kentucky DOT specs, or are they dealing with anything to do with the APWA specs? That might help inform Scott Quire in the future, but I'm going under the assumption that everybody's using the state DOT standards.
How different are they?
I really couldn't answer that question. I don't know. It seemed to be a pretty big deal to him, in the way that they go about it. If the state is going to an actual performance-based standard, I think that's pretty atypical of what the APW, DPW standard would do. So I'm not an expert enough to be able to really answer that question, Sandra. I apologize.
I guess the other question is, if if the DOT is worrying about the cracking specifications, is there more cracking or less cracking, or how does asphalt from shingles affect the cracking specifications?
Well, through what we've learned, we know that that what they're trying to do a little bit is replace some of the binder in there. And what they believe happened was that people made a miscalculation on what they can do, or maybe there was some people trying to utilize more shingles than they should, which created some issues, which created some concern with the DOT. And that is kind of what happened. Whereas Scott Quire from Bluegrass Testing Labs feels like that if done right, the way it's supposed to be, and people stay within a certain specification, there really isn't any performance difference. And that was the beauty of them going to a performance test versus a standard mix. Is what really matters is what it tests to be. And, his lab, when they do a mix, and for every job they do a mix, they put it together and they have to test it to make sure that its performance is going to be up to what the standard would be. And if it does that, then there shouldn't be an issue. They felt like that the shingles was not a problem whatsoever. And, it doesn't increase cost. It's certainly something that can be done. So, I think it was a period of time where somebody tried to use a little bit too much. People lost confidence in it. There is a lot on the line on some of these roadways. When you're throwing down roadway, it's expensive. You just really want to make sure it's good. And if there isn't some confidence in that can cause some issues. But that's why I believe that when we can get all of the people, the manufacturers of asphalt, to agree that this could be a pretty decent mix, and it tests performance wise, that we can kind of build that confidence back up, and then we'll start to use the shingles in asphalt like we used to. That's the hope.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the asphalt and shingles? No. Okay. The next thing was gypsum drywall. And I've talked with Matt Smith, and I don't know, Matt does not appear to be on this meeting, but Matt is definitely interested in this. He's got some experience in gypsum drywall into his mixes. He definitely wants to see what we can do. We have a meeting with Matt Smith and several people from the Soil Conservation District. And I think there was another group that was going to be represented. No. There's somebody from Soil Tech, somebody from University of Kentucky Agriculture, urban conservationist. We got several people that in the agriculture from the Soil Conservation District to kind of, hopefully they're going to be able to say, yeah, this will definitely be something that will work for Kentucky farmers, and that this can be definitely an additive to soils in this area. So I've been doing a little bit of research, and on this presentation, which we can send out, this is some background information on how it interacts with the soil and the things that it does. if the soil doesn't accept or it already has some of these properties, it doesn't make any sense, other than what I did find out was that when done right, it can actually capture 50% of the phosphorus from leaving and moving away from the ground, which is a really big issue when we talk about environmental runoff from fertilizing at farms and stuff. And, you know, it flows down the streams. So while it may not have in certain soils any productive value, so to speak, in getting better yields, it is better environmentally in that it captures some of the stuff and it keeps it in the soil. In other soils, it is definitely something that acts like lime. Everybody, you know, you hear about certain soils can definitely use lime, you get better yields. This is definitely something that can improve certain soils. So we're excited about our meeting. We're going to be meeting with them tomorrow. So we should be able to give a little bit more of an update at the full committee meeting next week. But we're excited to have Matt and his group. We're excited to have people from the Soil Conservation District and others to kind of start a conversation about whether or not that this is a viable option here in Louisville.
Would this be added to some of the products that Matt makes already, or would it be bagged separately?
Matt Smith just popped up on the meeting. So we're talking about gypsum drywall and the potential uses that you may have.
Yep.
You wanna share with the committee what your interest is?
Do you hear me, Pete?
I can. You're breaking up just a little bit.
I'm sorry, I'm driving, but yes, I've mixed it in with our current products.
So compost and
Yeah.
So
Correct.
yeah, is it beneficial to the process? Is it something that has a big value to you?
It is beneficial to the soil. Does it have economic benefit? No, but it is better for the soil. The disadvantage you have is when gypsum gets wet, it's breaking down, it smells like rotten eggs. And the last time I did it, I had every environmental agency in my area wanting to know what in the world I was doing.
Gotcha. So that might be a hurdle that we have to, as far as the processing of it, we know that it might help in the soil, but maybe there's a processing issue that might have to be overcome. Okay.
Right.
Hopefully we'll be able to work some of that out. And Matt, like I kind of alluded to earlier, if you've got other people that contacts in your business throughout the country that do this, what are some of their best practices on processing and some of the challenges that they have? Anything like that would be really good to know as well.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. And that's really all I have for the C&D side. We continue to work on some of these main components: gypsum, drywall, concrete, the asphalt. Well, I do have one other little update. The city did receive silver certification for to be a LEED certified city. Everybody's heard of a LEED certified building. Well, the city did get silver certification as a LEED certified city, which is really great, and it's awesome. We right now the agencies that do infrastructure work has agreed that we're going to track all of the demolition debris, where it goes, what happens to it, if it's landfilled, if it's processed. We started into that. You know, I think I was getting with Adam about concrete. So we're going to try to find out a little bit more about what's going where. And I think that's the first step, is knowing what you have. And then we can kind of, I think, potentially create a market or a small processor that may be interested in processing some of this stuff. It's a degree, if it's beneficial to the government agencies as far as trying to continue to keep our LEED certification as a city. I think it's a really good tool for a city to promote that it is a silver certified city to a lot of these major corporations out there that have sustainability goals. So I think it's a really good thing, and we definitely want to continue to work towards improving our stance when it comes to attracting business. Any questions on those things?
Yeah, I have a quick question on the drywall. Are you all looking at manufacturer scrap, or are you looking at like drywall that has come off a job, or is that feasible to recycle or do something with drywall that has already, been removed in the C&D process? Or are you looking at like a manufacturer scrap that's going to be super clean and no potential for other contaminants?
I think the ultimate goal for us, Adam, would be that we could utilize it even if it comes out of a construction building. I think that we'll have stages of this. The first part of this is getting a market for the material to begin with, because it doesn't make any sense to go any further. Then you have the high quality stuff, and that's what you're talking about, the stuff that's coming out of new construction that hasn't been painted and stuff like that. So that would be our next higher quality thing. And then later on down the road, if we have a really good market and it's worth going after the tear out drywall, then maybe somebody is willing to do that. But I think right now it's kind of like, at least from my standpoint, is let's get a potential market. Let's look at the good quality stuff first, and hopefully through developing this process and building it out, we get to the point where that material from clean outs has a value and can be processed. Maybe we find that through our end use, trying to find who can use it, maybe they don't have as high of a quality standard, and we can use construction or demolition drywall as well. But we don't know that until we find out what our end uses can be. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, definitely. So it's still just a matter of trying to find as many potential end users as possible. And then the more of those that you can lock down or find out, then you try to figure out how to make it work for the end user.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions on the C&D aspect? Awesome. Sandra, do you want to go back and go with the other item, or do you want to make a
Why don't
vote?
we'll do the minutes first, and that will at least be done, and then we can go to the other item, okay?
Gotcha.
Has everybody had a chance to read the minutes? And are there any suggestions for changes? If none, would somebody like to make a motion that we approve them?
Make a motion, we approve them.
Thanks,
I'll
Marie.
second.
Thanks, Adam. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, then it passes. Now, Pete, if we'll go to the next item.
Okay. Okay, so the next item was to discuss the expanded marketing campaign for recycling and composting. And in that proposal, we was talking about, at the last meeting, we was talking about the measurables. And one of those key things was the commodity capture rates. And I was going to do a little bit of research on commodity capture rates. I did that, I think, the day or the days after, I sent out a thing from the recycling partnership that talked about capture rates, and I think that it was called capture rate studies using data to drive recycling improvements. I still have that here on my screen if anybody didn't receive it or if we need to refer to it through this. But the one thing that I wanted kind of to talk about was the key design questions in there. And I'm going to try to go through all of these questions to a certain degree today, but my first focus is going to be on the first thing, the measurable goals. So what I want to tell you is what we have. And our current measurements, we do a curbside recycling rate. And we do this based upon the individual haulers, but we also do it based upon a county-wide statistic. And if you look at the chart, you can see how the individuals perform. And then at the bottom, the county-wide curbside recycling rate. And this includes recycling and yard waste. We are capturing 7.4% of the recyclable material from curbside and curbside recycling. Not a very big number. We capture 10.1% of the yard waste. So, and again, we'll get into the value of this information versus another capture rate in just a minute. But this is a statistic that we keep. We have it going back for years as something that we can compare to. Any questions on this chart? Okay. The next measure is the curbside services participation and availability rate. Big difference between availability and participation. If you look at someone that has a contract for all of the households within their service area, like the Urban Services District or the city of J-Town or even an HOA, everybody might have it available, but they might not participate. The city's participation rate, it's 100% available, but I think that we're sitting at 51 or 52% participation based upon how many carts that we've delivered and stuff like that. We've never had as good of a number as we got right now. Overall, countywide, after all of the collectors out there report how many households that they service, it's very difficult to do a participation rate because you have subscription, you have contracts, and the whole thing. So this is this is an availability rate to the best is what we can do. And we have to do this as part of our annual report to the state. So in 2020, our rate for garbage service was 98.6%. Everybody has service. That might seem great, but when you're talking about 300,000 households, 1.4% of those people not having garbage service is a pretty big number. And how much illegal dumping takes place, or how many property maintenance issues do you have because we've got 1.4%? That's probably maybe 10,000 households. That's a lot. 39.8% of households have recycling, and 36.9% of households have yard waste service. So all that is telling us is how many people that we have that it is available to them. It would be great if we can break it out by the different collection scenarios, like subscription versus contracted versus municipal. We just don't do that yet. And that's something that I would love to work on, but to be able to break it out by that, but then also to find some way to get an actual participation rate. How many people are recycling are active participants in recycling. And I think that's a really important number if we could ever get to it.
It's not just that, but we also, and you're talking about future data collection, we need to know where the non-participants are because that targets the education.
Agreed 100%. I think it's a really good point. We'll definitely keep that in mind because I think that is probably as important as anything else when it comes to trying to educate. Any other questions on this chart? Another one that we have is a pilot program that we're doing, current measurements, which is the Recycle Right program. Anybody remember, or, we do this tagging program. Green is that they've done a great job. Yellow is, yeah, you got some things in there, but it's still good enough we can take it. And then we got the red tag, which is, man, you're just throwing garbage in here. So we're doing that, and we have some great feedback on that. Karen and her team has done an excellent job. But we've only done 3 little areas and about 100 households in each for us to be able to. And I think when I say that this is a current measure, it's a current that's in a pilot format. We need to expand upon that. And that's going to be an ask that we have when we go to the 109 board at its next meeting is, can we, will you guys fund a part-time crew so many days per week for so many months or weeks out of the year to go do this? And they can do that across Jefferson County. It doesn't have to be just in the USD. It can be wherever that we can get them to go out and do it. And it can also expand into other areas. This is just an example of how successful this was when you look at Deer Park. High participation rate anyway. You got a receptive audience, so to speak. And in the first chart, you can see that of the yellow, the number of households that received yellow or red tags, you can see that it decreased 38 to 31%. That's a big deal. And then when we came back several months later, it was actually even more improved, which we wanted to see the durability of the message. So we know that it's good. In the other side here, we went from 43% of the households having bagged recyclables down to 21% on the next tagging, and then down to 8%. That's huge. Bagged material has less of a chance of being captured at the recycling facility. So just by getting people to not bag the recyclables, we definitely increase the amount of material that we're recovering. So that's huge. The number of plastic bags, people putting it in there, from 51 to 13 to 6%. And styrofoam was a little bit of a mixed thing, but we're still getting better. But you look at the impacts of this program here, and we did this in the Portland area. We did this in the South area where language was a bigger barrier. And in all 3 areas, we saw improvement. So if we can, one of our recommendations to the subcommittee as part of our education campaign that we're talking about here with the residential component would be to support the staff's recommendation to do this.
One of the questions I've got is I saw the 3 tags. How specific is the information we're giving to people? Do they know why their particular trash is not acceptable?
Karen, you want to jump in there?
Yes, there on the tag, it has a checkbox for like 6 different possibilities. And often on the red tags, sometimes we even wrote a note, but for the most part, it would be bagged because it includes trash. It says no bagged items and no trash. And then also large items, because sometimes they would just put in just junk. So it's not specific like you shoved a tire in there, but it would be specific to the category that the issue comes from.
I guess my question comes from the fact that I have been talking to some people over the course of the last year, and the icon message doesn't necessarily, just giving them a tag with icons, because like all of us have the preliminary information we give people, that doesn't always seem to get the message across. So I appreciate the fact that sometimes you go a step way further than that.
Yes, now with the language barrier in some areas, that won't go very far, but the good thing is with the icon, we have a little bit of a description of what that means plus Spanish on the tag. So that's helpful. But yeah, if it's really specific, we might write on it. And we noticed in the Shawnee area, we would see yard waste sometimes in there, but other areas we didn't have that problem, so we didn't have it on the tag. So I think we ended up counting it as a large item, like if it was sticks or something, but we would definitely have to write a note about yard waste being in there.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So this is another measurement that we can use to evaluate the effectiveness of our campaigns. And the perfect thing about different parts of town and different issues is what Karen just said. One part of town had yard waste, and that wasn't an issue in other areas. So we tailor our education message in that area to try to get the yard waste out of it and where it should be. The 10-year solid waste management plan, there is a huge amount of information in there about all the individual waste streams. And this is just a quick measurement of single family residential waste and what it's, what it's comprised of. The left chart is the tons of that particular category that's in there. And you can see that it's got, this includes everything from compostable paper to mixed low grade recyclable paper, leaves and grass and corrugated cardboard. So it gets into a lot of detail, but on the right side, it takes it and it breaks it down into what's recoverable and what's not, and in what category it can be recoverable. So if we're targeting a certain segment here, you see the red slice is things that there isn't a current market for where it's recoverable. There's not an outlet for it. That's just 35% of the waste from residential property that's going into the landfill. Then you look at the targeted curbside fiber, and that's 15%. And there's 34,000 tons in there. Keep in mind, if you go back and look at that chart, Metro and all of its households in the urban services district, we only get 11,000 tons total from curbside recycling. So as you can see, getting at 50% of that material that's currently going there would be massive for us. Targeted curbside containers, another 7% or 17,000 tons. And then the compostable organics. And honestly, this is the frontier that we have not went down. I don't think that there's an appetite to go down, but a lot of cities have started going down the food waste, yard waste, organics type of collection. And you can see why. It's a huge percentage of what is going into the landfill. It's heavy. You take the compostable organics, the targeted curbside, the targeted containers and fiber, and you've knocked off a massive amount of material that is going into the landfill and preserving a lot of space. And then the other programs that are smaller, but have good impacts as well. So we have all that information that we can refer to. So
how old is the information?
it is 2016. Is that when the study was done? Probably 2016. Now, it brings up a good point. Is it still relevant? I would say for the most part, it is. There is going to be some changes. And I would say that the changes are fairly predictable in the fact that we become the Amazon effect, where we have a lot more cardboard in our waste. And I also think that there would probably be more compostable material because more people are eating at home. Just because
And way less film, for example.
way less film. So there's going to be some changes, but some of those don't have much of an impact as far as weight. When it comes to film, it's almost, it's more of a volume than it is a weight. So, yeah, I'm saying that typically you want to do a composition study about every 5 years, a targeted composition study. So it would probably be time to do some type of a composition study to see the different changes. We don't have to do as far as what we did in the original study, but we can definitely do another composition targeted, to where we want to do it. So we have this, and it's great data. So capture rates, they did also put this, and I have it as a potential measurement because they didn't do much capture rate in the study, but we're capturing, according to the study, 62.9% of yard waste. Yard waste should not go into the landfill at all by ordinance right now. So 40% of it going into the landfill is a bit of a concern. Too many people are putting yard waste in with their trash. Capturing 56% of glass. And you can see one of the biggest things that I see as a glaring thing that we should be pushing for is to capture that metal. We're only capturing 24.5% of the metal. If we picked up 100% of that metal, how much more value is there in that material? It's huge. It's huge. So capturing, targeting our education towards capturing more of that metal would be definitely something that we would want to do. So just to explain a little bit about what difference between a capture rate and a recycling rate is. This is more in line, the graphic that you see here, 800 pounds of recyclables, 1,200 pounds of MSW or garbage for a total of 2,000 pounds out of this household. 400 pounds of it is collected and recycled. Out of the 2,000 pounds, that gives us a recycling rate of 20%. Now that's more in line with that first graph that I showed you on what we were looking at, where we had a pretty low rate, but they include yard waste in this as well. So right now, probably we're sitting at that 17.5 to 18% countywide when it comes to our recycling rate. So that tells us where our recycling rate is. Same graphic, just a little bit different look. When you do a waste composition study and you find out of that 2,000 pounds, 800 pounds of it is recyclable, or 800 pounds is recyclable, but only half or 800 pounds of it actually has a market. If I'm saying this right, I don't think I did, but we're capturing 50% of the potential recyclables in the garbage. So that's a wholly different metric when you try to understand how effective a recycling program is. We're measuring against what is available to be recycled, not the total waste stream. And then when you break it down even further into those individual commodities, and I didn't put that slide in here, I don't think, but this is an example of what Denver did. When they broke it out of their commodities, they found out that they wasn't capturing nearly as much metal. So they had a campaign. You can see some of the flyers over there, simple. And the aluminum cans increased from 47% to 59%. Huge increase by understanding what the commodity is and trying to target that to get maximum amount of that we can. That 12-point difference equates to an increase of can recycling of 25%, which is huge. 4% of that came from cans that were already, that were going into the garbage. So they had an increase of getting it out of the garbage and into the right stream, but 8% come from recyclables that was bagged. Meaning that if you target bagging, through our Recycle Right program, then it has a better chance of getting captured because it's not in that bag and it has less of a chance of getting thrown out. It's loose. So that's a perfect example of how we can use capture rates to judge how we're doing in our education, or using our education to improve our capture rates, one or the other, whichever way you want to look at it. So those are some of the things that we can do when we start to look at this as a campaign. We recommend that the subcommittee make a recommendation to the full committee to support the full Recycle Right program and implementation. So that is something that we would want this committee to say, yeah, we want to support that. And I can go into the full presentation that we would give to the board if this committee wants to see that before they make that recommendation, or to the full committee, however you guys want to do it. So this
Actually, I'd like to see it. Maybe we can do that next month.
Yeah, it's on the on the agenda for the 109 board on January.
The 109 board or the
109.
advisory.
And it'll
We
be,
can do it
we
at the
can have it
advisory
on the
committee.
full advisory committee at this next meeting next week as well.
Okay, so you could do it for the advisory committee next week.
Yes, if that's what the committee would want to recommend.
I don't know how we can recommend something when we don't know what the components are.
Yeah, well, the committee can say, we would want you to present it to the full committee and have the committee make a recommendation. There you go.
I would like to hear or see the presentation before recommending that. So yeah, if you thought we could fit it in the next full board meeting, that you could do it, and then I think we could make a and you said you already have it scheduled for this January 109 board.
It is going to be on the 109 boards because we feel pretty strongly that this is a direction that we've been heading for a long time. We would just want this committee and the advisory committee support, because if I take it straight to the 109 board and say we want to do this, they're going to turn around and say, well, what's the advisory committee think about it? So one way or another, the advisory committee needs to have the input into it, but we're just wanting to push it along.
Yeah, I mean, I feel comfortable supporting it, but I would feel even more comfortable after hearing your presentation. I think that would help, but if you need to know prior to that, or you got it scheduled, then I think we could also recommend that.
I'm not sure how we could make a meaningful recommendation without knowing the components. If it's already scheduled, it's kind of bypassed the subcommittee.
Well, I don't mean to bypass the subcommittee, because I feel like the subcommittee is going to have to weigh in on this one way or another. So it's probably me putting a little bit too much of a push to try to get it done. And we certainly don't have to move forward. Is it okay that we make this presentation to the full advisory committee and get the committee's input next week? And pending that input, we can make that recommendation at the board. I won't move forward without the full committee's approval.
I honestly think that's partly Burrow's decision.
Sure. Well, it's the full committee's decision. It'll be on the agenda. But I'm sure that Bruce would support hearing it and putting it to the full committee as a question. And again, this is just, I think, part of the education program. This is just one of the components of an education program. The next question on the form was, how will this campaign be coordinated with other proposed recommendations? It's a good question, but I also think that it can be from what we're doing as far as these measurables and, you know, the education that we're trying to do. We could use this blueprint to support any of the initiatives of the district. It's a measurement, it's a tagging, it's a public messaging campaign that we would do. I don't know that we're going to come up with a campaign that we're already doing a lot of the stuff. I think it's going to develop through what we're already doing. And I know Karen has the idea of calling this a put waste in its place type of a campaign, which we're going to talk a little bit more about. What are some of the new creative approaches to immediate outreach was another question. We have been working on the idea of anti-litter messaging, anti-illegal dumping messaging for quite some time. We want to ask the board to create a contract that we can call upon to lay out an RFP for a agency that will be able to take any initiative that we have and create a campaign, immediate outreach approach, you know, that's specific to behavior change and trying to affect that behavior change. But we want to get that contract in place so that we can look at some of the new creative approaches to let an agency do that for us. So that is going to be one of our asks as well, as to move this along. So I think that while we can talk about new creative proposals, I think having an agency that's their strong suit to come to us and say, this is what you need to be doing, would be the better approach.
What would be an example of a new creative approach?
I think it's more in some of the discussions that we had with some people when we was looking at anti-litter messaging is to be able to target a certain segment. And one was a company here in town does, everybody watches Hulu and, you know, YouTube TV and some of those in any way. You know that now that when you click on a certain thing, you want to see it, you have to go through a commercial. They have the ability to put certain messaging on there for a certain age group of the programs that a certain age group uses to be able to put an anti-litter messaging on that. They have to watch it if they want to watch their program. But that is a way, a new creative approach to me that allows you to hit a certain target audience. You know, could be, I don't know, people that drive pickup trucks that have stuff blow out of their trucks on the expressway. I don't know if there's a demographic for those type of people or for something that they watch, but it's finding those people and what they do and being able to specifically target their behavior that we want to change. So I think that's what we would want to look for in an agency, is to somebody that has the ability to target the people with the behavior change that we want where they live. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it really does.
So there are companies out there that I assume specialize in this kind of thing, or that's what the request for bid would be, or request for proposal, I guess. That's who you would be targeting to bid on this project?
Yes. The RFP would be for somebody that has that ability to create or to work with staff. We're not suggesting that they take the staff's job. We're suggesting that somebody that works with staff where staff needs them to work to be able to do this and to bring these ideas to us to say, this is how you can get this message out. To create, I don't know if, because we had a discussion about branding and whether or not something needs to be branded. Maybe the brand is something that's more in the ballpark of put waste in its place. Because that encompasses everything from litter to illegal dumping, to recycling, to yard waste, to everything. Put waste in its place, put it where it belongs. So it does encompass everything. But yeah, in a sense, we want to supplement our education staff and the knowledge that they have with a company that can go out, give us ideas on how to do it, maybe even create some of the material, and then be able to deploy it.
Are those companies local, or do you know? I'm interested where you even find someone who's in the field.
Karen, you want to answer that one?
Yes, there are some local companies. I'm sure it can be done not local as well, but we know of some already. And we've had some preliminary conversations just to kind of get an idea, just people that we already know or have contact with, just to kind of figure out, what we think we might be looking for. So yeah, and I mean,
Yeah,
sorry, go
that's
ahead.
kind of what I'm getting at, is that you all have had conversations with companies who have done this for other cities in the past, and kind of can see how that turned out for them. And because I think that would be a huge to work with a company who's familiar with this and who has done this before in other areas. And I think you would see a more positive results depending on what company that you look at to do something like this. So I just wasn't aware how common it is to find someone who could do this sort of thing.
Maybe I'm confused, but I'm not getting the feeling that the company specifically knows anything about recycling or waste. It's more that they're a media approach to getting information out. Is that correct?
That's correct. And when having a conversation with a company like this, they want to know what our end goal is, and they'll kind of help us get to our goal. So they don't know what we want. We don't know what behaviors we want to see or not see from the public, but that would all be established. And that's why put waste in its place is kind of general, and then different campaigns could focus on, a certain aspect of that, whether it's to not litter, or to recycle correctly. There can be a lot of different approaches. And then the companies definitely will have the expertise that I don't have when it comes to graphic design and the methods of putting these targeted campaigns in place to make it happen. It costs some money,
You'd be
but
providing the technically specific information regarding waste. They'd be showing you how to get the message out. Is that correct?
yes, and to help us target it to the right people.
Okay, yeah, I was completely misunderstanding then, because I was assuming that this company would help you with certain aspects of putting waste in its place. And as Sandra's saying, you're more or less just looking for a advertising media company to implement the strategies that you already have. So essentially.
Yes, like the messages are there. We know what the messages are, or we will establish exactly what messages we want out there. The company doesn't have to help with that part of it, but the implementation is where we need help. So I think it'll be, hopefully, if we can get something like this going, I think it'll be, really, useful and we'll see results. I have a contact with Air Pollution Control District that I've known for years, and they've had a company that they work with for years that that do this certain campaigns throughout the year. And, you know, and she shared with us some information on what it looks like to get a report from them. So it's just, it kind of helps give us a background of what to expect and, you know, what we would be asking for.
Are there companies out there that specifically are specialized in recycling or in this field that we're looking at, who could potentially help with marketing, or is it all just essentially marketing companies that you provide the information to?
My guess is it's mostly marketing companies. I mean,
Okay.
I feel like if you're a marketing company, that's kind of a niche that, you know, the company itself would be more broad. Of course, if we're getting proposals, we might go with someone who has experience doing something similar or more environmental kind of messaging. That might be something for us to look for.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that explains a lot to me, or I was unclear.
Yeah, I would also add that any good marketing company has to understand and learn what it is that they're going to be doing. So there's going to be a lot of work between us, but we also have, when you ask about other people out there, this is kind of where we rely, number one, on our experience, but also on like the Recycling Partnership. Recycling Partnership has a lot of material that they know works across other parts of the country that we can rely on. They have become invaluable to us as far as being able to know what works. So along with these organizations out there that are looking to promote it across the country, our experience, and with a really good marketing group, I feel pretty confident that we're going to be able to get that message out there. It just needs to be tied to our recycle right. It needs to be tied to our metrics so that we can measure. And that is putting all these pieces together to where we know the message and we can see what is taking place. A metric for litter is a cleaner city through assessments. When we do litter assessments and we score 1 through 4, if we got a cleaner city, part of that is we should see improvement in that, right? From the collection of litter to the messaging not to litter. So our goal in that respect is, you know, that's our measurable, is the city cleaner. So yeah, there's a lot of different avenues that we would want to go down with this. And I think that's why we want to put it under that umbrella that Karen came up with, which was placed in its place.
And
Do
it's
you
a
have a
good
clue
time
how much
for it.
money we're talking about?
I'm sorry.
Do we have any idea how much money we're talking about?
Well, I'm not sure if I want to throw out that number yet, but I'm thinking that we want something, because we don't have an exact thing on what we want to do, to put a up to number that the board feels comfortable with us spending. And obviously, we're not going to do it in a vacuum. We're going to have a contract that does not exactly mean that work is automatically going to be done. It means that we have the mechanism to get it done. So if they approve us up to $100,000 annually as a budget for these education campaigns, and we spend $25,000 because that's what we brought to the board to get done, then we know what our next year's budget needs to be. So we might start off with a up to $100,000 pending approval of the board on each individual initiative that we want to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Mhm. And the last thing on that the recommendation was, how will this campaign address the 2 local MRFs different accepted materials lists? And this is a challenge for us, education-wise, because if you have some people getting collected and this is acceptable, some people collect it and this is acceptable. When you get these differences, it can make problems for us in our messaging. So this was a question that was part of the recommendation. I know there's the material list for one of the vendors is, potentially changing here shortly to include more material. So I think we're drifting closer together anyway. So it might not be an issue, but I don't know how we're going to address it except to address it as it comes. And, we'll have to do that, in probably multiple different areas in the ways that we do things. But maybe we tailor our messaging where it doesn't matter at all.
That's what I was, a long time ago when this came up, there are more areas where they are the same than where they are different. And the areas where they were different did not look like they had a large number of tons attached to them.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think this is doable. I really do.
Yeah, it's like when we talked about our capture rates with metal cans, they both accept metal cans.
Exactly.
Yeah, so yeah, I agree.
What is an example of something that one would accept and one wouldn't? Like,
Mostly plastic items. The city's recycling goes to West Rock, and plastic items and food takeout kind of things. We've enhanced the program to be able to accept takeout packaging, but Rumpke did not have all of those as accepted items on their list. So occasionally we have to kind of give that little caveat of some waste haulers don't accept the same items.
it's like just certain variations of plastic, one will take and one doesn't want. So it's a matter of working that out in the education process.
Yeah. Generally, it's the same. I get specific, especially in my No Waste Wednesday, just because it's trivia and that's kind of the part of it that people like is something real specific, whether it's recyclable or not. So sometimes I have to, call out like, well, you can in this area, maybe not in this area. But yeah,
Okay.
Sandra's right though. I think it is more similar than it's different.
Okay, thank you.
So that ends what I wanted to talk about. I think all in all, when we go back and we look at what this recommendation is, I think that we've actually started to form up a residential education program. The Recycle Right program, the data collection, creating getting a contract that can be specific as to what our data is telling us. I think we're putting in all the elements that we need to finally have something that is going to be implementable. Now, what this subcommittee does as far as with the recommendation, it could be just writing something up that says, we feel comfortable moving forward on a case-by-case basis with these key elements, and taking it, step by step, the contract for doing outreach and education, and knowing that this thing and I think it's really important that we adopt something like an overall message, which is putting waste in its place, as that campaign name, because I think that lets everything fall underneath of it really nice. But I know that we're 5 minutes over, but if there's something that the subcommittee wants to, we need to finalize this in some way to tell the board, yeah, we've moved forward. This is the key elements. This is our campaign. But make it flexible enough that we can do what we need to do underneath of it, which I think that we're doing.
Why don't you outline the key elements? Because I think that in great part we'd agree with you, and just send it to all the members of the subcommittee, because they'll be at the advisory committee meeting if you already have this on the agenda, and they've all had an opportunity to listen, and I have not heard any complaints about what you've said.
Okay, we'll do that. And we'll also send the presentation along for the Recycle Right program that we're going to put out. You know, it's a presentation and you'll see it, but you won't hear the commentary behind some of it. So at least you'll be a little bit better prepared when we talk about it next week.
Anything else? Any comments from citizens? Then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second,
Adam.
Marie just seconded it. Thank you. All in favor? See
Aye.
you next week.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.